recommend that we approve the peace poll and that we ask Jenny to continue to work with the Interact to try to find the most appropriate place to plant a garden. And maybe around that circle area is not the right place. I don't know, but do some research, find out, and maybe even bring back to us what it would cost to, dig a trench and bring the water over, et cetera, et cetera. So just kind of do that and maybe bring that back. But I would like to recommend that we do approve the peace poll tonight, which we do have a motion on. So any further discussion on it? All in favor? Aye.
But before you move on to the next item, I forgot to tell you guys the tennis courts. We got the second quote. It is $23,000 for the El Molino, just to hopefully make it something or other work for a couple of years. So I'm not sure where the board feels about that.
Maybe you can bring that back as an agenda item. We can talk about it more. Everybody agree with that? Okay. Jenny, can you bring up the picture that I asked you to post? Because I wanted to talk about this. So the Anley alumni were reached out, or actually they reached out to the Veterans of Foreign Wars and asked for help with this plaque that has been now placed down by the field on this rock. It's by the flagpole that the Anley alumni put up years ago. This is just in memory of the Anley alumni who served and died in the Vietnam War. And we just want to thank the alumni so much for doing this. This will be dedicated at a football game, I think. Linda, do you know? In the fall sometime. So if anybody's interested in that event, the VFW will be coming and serving as honor guard and doing a little dedication to this plaque. So I just wanted you all to see that and know that. Thank you. Okay. All righty, we're going to move on now to Education Services, second reading of recommended revision for CSBA January 2026 updates for policies and regulations. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Linda. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Lewis. Okay, Chris?
Unless there's any questions, I think the board can take their vote.
Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Next is Business Services, review of the home to school transportation plan. Andrew.
Yep. All right. So I think this
It's just a review, so we don't need a motion. Thank you.
Yeah. So this goes to where advocacy at work. So in getting transportation funded at least at 60% as part of this legislation that came into effect a few years ago. We have to review the transportation plan annually. Nothing has changed since the last time that we looked at this. What we do have to do is kind of estimate what is the next year's expenditures. So next year will be funded on the current year expenditures, what actually is at the actuals. So we'll know that in the fall, but current estimates that we have about $1.9 million in transportation expenses. So we'll get 60% reimbursement, about $1.1 million is that 60% reimbursement. Currently, there's a home to school transportation add-on as part of the local control funding formula that's always been in place. That was stagnant since for many, many, many years. Now that home to school transportation add-on is getting the COLA added to it. So it's estimated that next year's local control funding formula home to school transportation will be about $608,000. To make up that difference to the 1.1, the state will backfill that by the about $506,000 to get us to that 1.1. So when you look at that form, it kind of doesn't make sense. So without going through all that, currently estimated by just taking that $1.9 million basically current budgeted home to school transportation expenses, adding 3% to it. We need to wait for West County Transportation to do their budget, to get their estimates, any changes to leases, infrastructure payments that they, pass on to member districts. So currently, it'll just be over the 1.9. We're a little under the, about 1.85 or so. So it'll just be over 1.9 million, just kind of estimating, but we'll know more once we get to budget. So with that, that is the transportation plan.
Thank
for
you.
Next year.
I am absolutely shocked that they have finally decided to add COLA back to that. It's been like 10 years
Very long time.
that we haven't gotten that. Like it didn't matter. I don't understand. So I'm glad that our advocacy has worked. We do try to fight for this all the time through CSBA. So I appreciate their efforts because it has meant a lot to our district. I know, and I know it means a lot to other districts. Any other comments, Lewis?
So how much transportation cost comes out of the general fund? We're getting
Majority of- yeah.
reimbursed and then we're also getting reimbursed.
Yeah.
So are we,
So it's all a general fund expense.
but
Right now, unrestricted for the main part. A few years ago, we were able to do use supplemental funds to kind of help offset that when we had some extra dollars that were still in supplemental dollars for the local control accountability plan.
So
So you
what's
said we
the
get what-
total that we have to supplement?
Yeah.
Our total,
Just over $900,000.
over 900,000. That's what I thought. Yeah, almost a
800,
million.
900. We're at
Yeah.
1.8. We're getting about 1 million right now.
Okay.
Very frustrating. Any other comments? Thank you so much. Okay, we will move on to consideration of the approval of the 2025-26 second interim budget report. Can I get a motion, please? Thank you, Louis. A second. Thank you, Sean. Off you go.
All righty. So here we are again, looking at the second interim budget. Again, kind of a snapshot in time, not a real forecast as what were the assumptions that we had when I went through this action of putting this together. Knowing that it's a living, breathing document, figuratively speaking, but things have changed already. So as we look at this, we're required to approve these interim budgets looking at, for second interim, actuals through January 31st, estimates through the remainder of the year, looking at can we meet over our multi-year projection, the expenditures based off of the assumptions that we know. So recommending that the second interim budget is certified as positive to support or to move on to the County Office of Education for their review and submittal to State Board or what's it called? CDE, California Department of Education. So we go on to that next slide. It's kind of what I talked about of what second interim is, and go on to slide 4. In looking at the enrollment projections from first interim to where for second interim, when we did the updated demographic study, and looking at the low projection and kind of backing off those interdistrict transfers that we think we may not get, kind of that conservative approach, there wasn't much of a change from first interim to second interim. Enrollment, we left the same. The demographic study, had a few little less, and it's like, you know what? We're just going to leave it at where we were at first interim. We came in pretty good based off of that low demographic enrollment projection. You see our current ADA of 1437.5.52 for 25-26. And that as estimating, it's about 92%, giving us a projected funding of at 1,445 funded, where we're going to actually get our funding off of that for our local control funding formula. And that is based off of the prior year. So we're looking at, because our prior year was higher than our current year average or the 3-year average, will be funded on prior year for this year, based off of kind of the assumptions and local control funding formula calculator that we put that together. You see the drop in enrollment over the next 2 years, using that kind of the same kind of blended average between across our school sites. The current ADA you see, going down by about 100 for next year, and then again a little 30 or so for that following year out. And because we're funded on that prior year, 3-year, or current year average, the 3-year average for those 2 out years is where we're projecting to be funded off of right now. Our unduplicated counts this year went up, and you see those, and that we just apply that same assumption to the out years. When we move on to the next slide for the local control funding formula projection, at first interim for 26-27, we used a 3.02% COLA. The governor's budget had a 2.41% COLA, so that's bringing COLA down by 0.61. So in recalculating what that looks like, we see next year, that change in 0.5% there, a little over 0.5%, is about $160,000. So that brings our year-over-year revenue for second interim at only $441,000, basically. And then we see that applied to the next year. It was 3.42 at first interim for 27-28. It's projected now at 3.06, so a drop of 0.36 in COLA. And then again, that just kind of reduces revenue, even though we still have $242,000 year-over-year revenue that we get. But that goes to hopefully cover all the increases related to all operational expenses. So, if we look, we don't see that we're not realizing 100% of our COLA that, the state's saying you're going to give you 2.41. Well, our year over year, we're only receiving about 2.09 just based off of where our enrollment and average daily attendance is. And you see that again for that 27-28. 3.06, we're only projected to realize 1.13%. Again, that will all change once we see what actually materializes and what comes through. As we look at the revenues, again, based off of the local control funding formula on the next slide for revenues, this is this slide has our combined unrestricted and restricted totals in there. If we were just to look this year at our unrestricted totals, we have about $22 million in revenue that comes in through the unrestricted side. And if you look at the big packet on page 47 and 49, you'll see the full multi-year projection that's broken out by unrestricted, restricted, and combined. So, and then our restricted revenue is almost $14 million. So that makes up the $36 million. And again, this is a combination of both the high school and operational budget for the consortium. So it's a blended together there. Revenues for those out years, the changes from first interim to second interim, looking at our local revenue, and that is going down. And that projection is currently the assumption that we will not realize the same interest rates as we are currently right now. Over the past few years, we've been less than 1%, now to almost close to 4% of interest. We don't know what's going to happen politically and all the banks and all the finances and everything else that's going to happen right now. So we can't bank on that going to receive $400,000 in interest, especially as fund balance continues to go down. And then who knows what interest will be at the county treasury at that time. So you see that's where that change in local revenue is, the real drop there. As we go on to expenditures and we look at that, our unrestricted expense, this is again a combination of all expenditures across the unrestricted and restricted budget. We have an unrestricted currently expenditure rate of almost 17% $17.6 million. Again, we're receiving $22 million. We have a contribution to restricted programs of just over $7 million. You know, towards programs that are required to be operated. So that's in combination there. So that, again, overall there, but really understanding that $22 million of unrestricted revenue, $17.6 million in general operational expenses, and then $7 million in contributions to restricted programs. On to the next, we talk about the expenditure contributions that are coming into the general fund, and the $65,000 again is just offsetting the $1 million to the routine restricted maintenance that's required by law. Within the assumptions that we look at it as part of all those expenditures is the cost of living adjustments that we see the 2.3, 241, and 306 right now built into there. Step and column has been built in, just the natural steps and column for certificate and classified, 1.5 for certificate, 1.4 for classified. Health benefits we say is about 5%, but we know that that is the year over year that's happening for the premiums has been around it's around 10, 11%. They're projecting that that's what it's going to be again. But, you know, we have everybody all over in different plans that they're selecting family plus one, total family. So looking at that, just kind of a very small increase there of 5%, but we'll really have to see what that comes in at once we get those rates here and later in the spring. STRS is remaining balanced over the next few years, and CalPERS does see kind of a stabilization, but it does have minor fluctuations. And then we add in those 3% costs regarding various expenditures across all operational expenses. Services and operation expenses, you know, we do see the special education costs that continue to rise each year. On this coming Friday, at the Special Education Advisory Council, they are presenting the non-public school, non-public agency rates that they're asking for, and they're all asking for increases for next year as well. So as those kind of continue to emerge, we'll see how that impacts the budget moving forward. Utility costs, we do have some unencumbered utility costs that are still part of the budget, but we're waiting for final bills to come in, especially around electricity and our solar true-up bills. We just received one. It was $71,000, the year-over-year true-up. So the year before it was over $100,000. So that was for one bill. So, you know, we're waiting for two more true-ups to come through, which will probably come in the late April, May. So we don't know what those are, but we anticipate that's why those still are in budget. And then looking at staffing on the next page, we know where we're at. We've talked about it. This current second interim assumptions were built prior to the final action being taken. We had tried to hope to find 10. We found 9.4. We'll continue to evaluate to where we're at to see how that is. But so we'll need to continue to work the budget to see where we actually finally land on, and then build those into next year's budget and see what that looks like. Then to our multi-year projection on the next slide. Again, the combination of restricted, unrestricted, you see where we had a starting balance for 25-26, just over $12 million in combination of those unrestricted, restricted programs. If we look for this year, that unrestricted balance was almost $6.8 million of that $12 million. As you walk through down, you know, what's the income, the expenditures. Right now, in combined, we're looking at almost $9.3 million in calculated ending fund balance. The unrestricted amount, we're looking at almost $4.9 million in ending fund balance. And then you take out, to get to that 4.9 of unappropriated amount, you see the 3% for reserve for economic uncertainties. the almost 1.2, and it stays about 1.1, 1 million throughout for that reserve for economic uncertainties. But just really for the ending fund balance projection for unrestricted this year, we're at 6.8, and then 4.1 in 26, 27, and then 2 million right now is what's projected in this current assumption in building the second interim budget. So by that 27, 28, based off of the current assumptions applied, there's only $224,000 in unappropriated amount. So we see that, and then we move on to the cash flow, and we do currently have cash on hand to meet our current objectives, or obligations, sorry, through the year. So that's another financial standing that we have there. And then just kind of continuing the cycle as we talk about every time. Really looking at that next measurable point will be the May revise that Governor will put out, which will kind of set the foundation to what those assumptions will be for next year's budget. And really just continuing to look to see what our current expenditures are. Are we meeting budget? Are there dollars in the budget that we can free up as we move throughout the rest of this year to really kind of get those estimated actuals more in line, that there's not this large fallout that happens. There'll always be some fallout, but try to get it into a more reasonable dollar amount so that we know exactly what we have to work with moving forward. So that is what we have in second interim.
Thank
Any
you, Andrew, so much. Are there any questions for Andrew regarding this?
It's like, I mean, I'm sure that we've talked about this before, but why, it's because of how they're doing the ADA that it drops down so much?
So for the enrollment with it going down, and we're looking at ADA about 92% through the blended between the consortium, Annalee, AIA, Laguna, blending that, we get about 92% total of what our revenue would be. And then it looks so with dropping enrollment, if ADA stays the same at 92%, you have less kids to apply that 92% to.
And we got a fixed amount per student.
Yeah, so about
That's the 13,500.
Right at 92.
92%.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about 13.5 at 92%.
Or
And
14.50.
that factors in overall average enrollment in ADA across the district. So some school programs have higher percentage of attendance rate than others.
Mhm.
Well, and was it, I mean, sorry, I'm just trying to, I mean, because 92% is, I mean, it's the same if it's a set amount per student. So, but like, it's like I thought I recall something about how the ADA was calculated before is changing a little bit.
It changes it could change at each reporting period.
Well, I mean, like before, like there was times during COVID where it was not.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
so like seeing the current ADA drop, but if we assume the same percent of daily attendance, so then I was just trying to.
So at COVID they froze ADA, and we kept that higher year before COVID hit, and we were able to keep that number in for 3 years.
Mhm.
So each year, 1 year dropped off, and that's where the 3 year rolling average came into play, because the state realized that, oh my gosh, everybody's going to hit this financial cliff now with lower ADA, and we need to slow them into that. So we kind of hit our financial ADA cliff a couple of years ago when that final year fell out. So if you look in the packet on page 104 here, you have the local control funding formula calculation. And then you see kind of down one section, 1, 2, kind of that third purple section, LCF entitled funding per ADA. You see where that is, where it estimates where it's at, and then it kind of just changes where that's currently what the current year is. But because of how we're funded, it'll change the dollar amount to what we actually receive. The 3 year, current year, prior year.
So will that kind of like even out like at some point?
It could, depending on what enrollment, and really depending on what ADA could also do. Because
Yeah,
if we're
well,
at,
I mean, if we assume it stays the same and
yeah, if enrollment stayed the same all the time, and
well, if ADA stays like the same all the time, or if the 92% stays the same.
if 92% stays the same, then you could stay flat. If enrollment stays flat, everything being equal every year. So
That hasn't been the case though, unfortunately. Yeah.
when we did budget last year and there was no other constraints within enrollment, we were looking at being funded on current year in the next 3 years. So now it adjusted, now it's just kind of to ease us in that you don't have this huge drop in funding each year. That's where the 3 year rolling average comes in. I know it's kind of
It's one of the reasons that I want to try to speak with the legislators about really, really considering enrollment-based payments and not ADA, because it's not just harming our school district, it's harming every school district. Granted, I guess the state saves money because kids aren't in school, but to me, it's not an incentive. I've heard the case that enrollment-based funding would make it so the school doesn't have the desire to get kids to school. I don't know that that's the case, but I know that financially, when we used to do enrollment based, it was a lot easier. So,
Oh, we have to have teachers and we have to have chairs in classrooms based on enrollment, not based on ADA. So we have the cost. We're just not
exactly,
getting reimbursed.
exactly, and that's what I hope to be able to express.
Just one comment. Looking at the first interim and the ending unappropriated reserve was about what, 1.2 million? I just had it here, sorry. $1.1 million. And now second interim, it's $200,000. So we've had to adjust $900,000 in our projected ending fund balance. We just have to be careful. I mean, and then that's only 2 years out. That's not like a 4-year out projection. That's 27, 28.
Mhm.
We're now in 26. So I just, as fellow board members, that's a real thing, and projections can be off. Yeah, we know, yeah, but
Mhm.
it's declining for sure.
Yeah.
And we have to be careful. That's all. Just let's keep our eyes wide open. That's all.
Thank you. Any other comments? Sure, come on up here.
That's on, okay. On the assumptions page, it says statutory benefits increase, and then there are sub-bullet points under that. Health benefits 5%, CalSTRS 19.1%, CalPERS 26.81%, books and supplies, which looks like those are all increases to what we're currently paying. But it's my understanding that CalSTRS has no increase projected. Is this our current obligation, or is that an increase?
No, CalSTRS is at 9.1 for current year and the 2 out years.
Okay, but it's sublisted under statutory benefits increase. So it looks like more than what we're
Increase.
currently obligated to pay. Health benefits, are they at 5%, or is that a 5% increase?
5% increase to health benefit.
And then right underneath that, it says CalSTRS 19.1%,
19.1 for current year and 2 subsequent years.
but that's not an increase, is my question.
Right, so it
Right.
stays steady. So yes.
It's
so
steady. Okay,
19.1. Yeah.
because it's under there as a subset of bullet points, it looks like all of those are increases to our current
Gotcha.
benefits, statutory costs.
Yeah, thanks, Lily. That was confusing.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, we have a motion on the table. All in favor of this item? Aye. Thank you very much. Okay. I think that's it, because human resources, we have nothing. And next would be future meeting dates, April 8th, May 6th, and June 10th. So, did you?
No, I think, and we're at El Molino, I believe. for those.
Yes. Yeah, at El Molino. Thank you. Okay, with that, I'm going to close the meeting. Thank you guys very, very